I was out making rounds one afternoon, rounds of agents' offices, going from one agent's office to another, seeing what was going on, trying to get a job. And I stopped in this one agent's office, Richard Bauman. And he was on, let's see, what is that, 49th Street between 7th and Broadway. And I was sitting in his office talking with him, and he got a call from a woman named Linda Otto, who was a casting director at the time and was casting Dark Shadows. And he spoke with her for a couple of moments, and he got up. I said, hold on a second, and went, Mike, what are you doing tomorrow? He's on a phone like this, and I said, nothing. Why? He said, you want to make a couple of bucks? They're doing this show called Dark Shadows, and one of the characters is having a curse put on him. And he's going to be aged about 200 years. What they need is someone to be in this old makeup, and they'll crossfade from one to the other, and you're about the right size and the right coloring. And it's a day's work. I said, sure, why not? So I went up he sent me over to Linda's office. I go walking into Linda's office, and she says, where have you been? Now, she was above the Palace Theater, which is like maybe about 4 blocks away. It took me all of about maybe 5 or 10 minutes to get there. I said, what are you talking about? I just got here. I was in Dick's office when you called him, and I came right over. She says, no, I've been looking for you for the last couple of weeks. Dan Curtis wants to see you about a part on the show. She sent me right over to Dan's office. And I met with Dan. They gave me a character description on Aristide. There was no dialogue, and set up a screen test for that Friday. I showed up at the studio. It was about 9 o'clock in the morning. Friday. A friend of mine, Paul Jenkins, was up for the role also. There were 3 of us there. Went into makeup, what have you. George DiCenzo came, got the other guy, I don't remember the other third man's name, took him down, he did his test, came up, got me. And Lila was directing the piece and talking. God, what a voice to hear through the PA system when you weren't used to it. And they started talking to me about Aristide, and I just played like I was Aristide. And I wouldn't let go of the character. Got through with it, it lasted all of about maybe 2 or 3 minutes. And George came to get me and bring me back upstairs. And he was all very enthusiastic and said, hey, you've got it, I know you've got it, you're going to do it, I know it, I know it, I know it. Kept going on like that. I went home, and I guess, hour and a half, 2 hours later, got a phone call from the agent saying you got the role. And I originally met Dan, I'd say maybe 6, 8 months prior to that. I was doing a play off Broadway, and an agent sent me over. He was doing a pilot for a show that never sold called In the Dead of Night, and had me come over and do a test for that. I never did get that one, but he had remembered me from that and then brought me back for Aristide. Basically, all the characters were the same character. Bruno and Aristide specifically had certain elements which were very much alike. They were both psychopathic, cold-blooded killers. At the same time, there was an artistic sensibility, with Bruno being a composer and a pianist, etc. So playing that juxtaposition of the menacing, cold individual, yet with that artistic, creative sensibility, was a part that interested me most in playing the characters. And yeah, it was a lot of fun doing it. I think everyone had their tongues firmly implanted in their cheek on that show, and we had a great time doing it. I had a great time doing the show the entire time that I was on it. Yeah, I'm totally surprised, and I guess pleasantly so, that the phenomena, for want of a better word, of Dark Shadows is continuing 20-some-odd years later. When I first got onto the show, there was no expectation in my mind that it would have the kind of impact that it does. Somehow I think it's poetic justice that it's being revived in another incarnation now. And it's very pleasing to me to see it go on like that. And that was a lot of fun working on that show. And generally what we used to do is after the show was over, we'd all land up going up to this French restaurant up on a corner and having a drink or standing around and just talking and gabbing with each other and coming down off the adrenaline rush of doing the show. It was a cast that got along very well together. The chemistry was wonderful between all the people. I think we all genuinely enjoyed the time we were at the studio and enjoyed each other's company. A number of people who I met originally on the show are now friends, or I consider to be friends of mine. I'm not sure that I have a fondest memory of the show. Just good feelings about various people that were on the show and our relationships. John Fridd and I are still very close friends. Chris Pennick and I. We met for the first time on that show and have stayed in touch and friends over all the years. Just a lot of good, solid friendships were formed on that show. My impressions and memories of it are all warm and pleasant. The entire time that I was on a show, I just had a great time. You know, and I can't say that there was one moment that was more outstanding than the other. Just a lot of good, pleasant times with a lot of very nice, interesting people. I did another soap after that, Edge of Night. And when I first went on to Edge of Night, we were live, and then went onto tape. Now, interestingly enough, and there was, I'm sure, no consciousness on anyone's part on this, when we were live, no one went up. All the actors that were regulars on that show, nobody ever went up. Within 2 months of going onto tape, every single actor, every one of us that was a regular on that show, went up once. And I think on an unconscious level, or subconscious level, the focus of our concentration, or the intensity of the concentration, or whatever, was lessened when we realized that we had the luxury of tape and could stop. When we were live, that gave us that extra edge. And I think that edge, unconscious though it may be, gives a certain kind of energy and push and sparkle to a show. And I think that helped. I think that helped the entire production value of Dark Shadows. Oh, there's another story that I thought of that was kind of fun, going back a little bit about humorous moments. When I was doing Bruno, they had my hair in what I call the Victor Mature pompadour, all pulled back and piled high. That necessitated putting my hair up in curlers every morning. Now we're down at one of the rehearsals and Laura Parker's sitting there with her hair up in curlers and I'm sitting there with my hair up in curlers. And I can hear the cameraman mumbling back and forth to somebody up in the booth, and they're going back and forth, back and forth. And finally he goes, look, I'll pull in for the close-up as soon as I figure out whose curlers I'm focused in on. And Laura and I both just lost it right then and there. I have a photograph of the two of us with our hair in curlers too.